They ride the line between myth and menace. To the outside world, they are the Bandidos MC, the cuts, the chrome, the thunder that rattles the windows of suburbia. They are labeled, defined, and dismissed as the bad guys, the outlaws, the villains of the American road. Their reputation is carved in stone by headlines and hearsay, associating them with the shadows of the justice system. But what if those labels were nothing more than a convenient lie? What if the men who wear those patched vests, the ones society fears, are the very ones willing to step into the fire when everyone else looks away? Tonight, we peel back the layers of prejudice to reveal a story of unexpected heroism, a narrative where the good guys wear black leather and ride iron horses. This is not the story the news tells. This is the truth whispered on the wind, a testament to the fact that even the most feared amongst us can carry the burden of being a protector. It all started with a whisper, not of the wind, but of pure desperation, written on a crumpled piece of paper. In the sleepy, unremarkable town of Harmony Creek, life moves at a pace that suggests nothing truly bad could ever happen. The streets are clean, the lawns are manicured, and the biggest event of the year is the annual church bake sale. But beneath the veneer of small-town perfection, darkness often takes root. Sarah, a 9-year-old girl with eyes too old for her face, lived in one of the houses that looked perfect from the outside. Inside, however, her life was a tightrope walk around the volatile temper of her mother's new boyfriend, Mark. Mark was a large man, quick to anger, and even quicker to use his hands. Sarah's mother, beaten down by life and fear, had become a ghost in her own home, unable or unwilling to see, let alone stop, the escalating torment directed at her daughter. For Sarah, the days bled into each other, each one a countdown to the next outburst, the next bruise that had to be hidden beneath a sleeve or a shy smile. She had no one to tell, no teacher, no relative, who she felt could truly understand the deep, suffocating fear that was her constant companion. The system felt too big, too slow, and too distant to save a little girl like her. The Bandidos MC often used a diner just outside Harmony Creek as a stopover. It was a greasy spoon called the Iron Skillet, where the coffee was strong and the waitress, an older woman named Betty, didn't judge the noise or the leather. The chapter president, a man known simply as Reaper, was a giant of a man with a beard that could rival a grizzly and eyes that seemed to have seen too much of the world's harshness. Despite his imposing figure, Reaper possessed a quiet intensity, a sense of weary justice that ran deeper than his cut. He and a small group of his brothers were there one rainy Tuesday, discussing club business over cold coffee. As they were leaving, ready to mount their bikes and head further down the interstate, Betty approached Reaper with a look of genuine distress. She didn't want to involve the police. She said they never did anything for the poor souls in Harmony Creek. She knew the reputation of the men in front of her, the reputation of outlaws, but she also knew they operated outside the slow-moving bureaucracy that often failed the most vulnerable. Betty thrust a small, folded note into Reaper's massive hand. It was written on a napkin from the diner, the handwriting shaky and childish. The note hadn't been left by Sarah herself, but by a worried, observant neighbor who had witnessed enough and knew Sarah's house backed onto the woods near the diner. The note contained only 6 words, scrawled in hurried pencil. "He hurt me again." That was followed by a rough address. Reaper looked down at the note, then at Betty's pleading eyes. For a man who had faced down rivals, law enforcement, and life-and-death situations, these 6 words hit him with the force of a wrecking ball. He thought of his own sister, of the helplessness he had felt years ago. He knew instantly that this was not a matter for debate or discussion. This was an imperative. This was a call to action that transcended their criminal label. He didn't need to say a word. His brothers, Snake and Ghost, watched his face shift from stoic indifference to focused, dangerous resolve. They knew the unspoken code. Some lines are not crossed, and hurting a child is the ultimate transgression, one that earns the swift, brutal justice of the road, not the courts. They folded up the club business and mounted their bikes. The 3 machines didn't just start, they roared to life, a low, menacing growl that spoke of intent and inevitable confrontation. They left the highway, turning down the quiet, tree-lined streets of Harmony Creek, following the crude directions scrawled beneath the desperate message. The residents who saw them pass, three hulking figures on thundering Harleys, quickly pulled their curtains shut, confirming the town's prejudice. They saw the danger, but they completely missed the mission. They were riding not as criminals, but as a cavalry, responding to a silent plea that the rest of the world had failed to hear. The address led them to the perfect house, the one with the freshly painted fence and the blooming roses. It was the last place anyone would expect a silent horror to be unfolding. The Bandidos MC had arrived, ready to dispense a kind of justice that only those outside the law can truly deliver. A justice motivated by a raw, unfiltered desire to protect the innocent. They approached the front door, the heavy silence of the street broken only by the rhythmic tick of their cooling engines. The stage was set, and the outlaws were about to become the saviors. The engine ticks died down, leaving an oppressive silence in the suburban street. Reaper took a deep breath, the air thick with the smell of wet pavement and fear. He didn't knock. When you're dealing with a situation this volatile, protocol is a liability. Instead, he simply lifted his massive, steel-toed boot and kicked the door right off its hinges. The sound was deafening, a shotgun blast in the quiet neighborhood. Inside, the scene was chaos, but exactly the chaos they expected. Mark, the boyfriend, was a bull of a man, standing over a trembling Sarah, her small body curled near a broken lamp. He was mid-sentence, his face contorted in a mask of aggressive fury, when the door exploded inward. The sight of three massive figures, clad in black leather and club colors, frozen in the doorway, stopped him cold. The immediate shock was palpable. Mark, for all his bluster and domestic tyranny, was now facing something truly frightening, something that operated outside the rules he was used to breaking. Sarah's mother, seated on a couch with her hands over her face, let out a choked scream, less of surprise and more of pure, terrifying recognition of the club's presence. She knew the reputation. Everyone did. But her terror was momentarily overshadowed by the sight of her daughter, who, seeing the sudden intrusion, didn't recoil further but instead looked up with a flash of confused hope. That hope, flickering in the eyes of a child, was all the justification Reaper and his men needed. Mark, however, quickly regained his composure, his fear hardening into belligerence. He puffed out his chest and took a challenging step forward. "Who the hell are you?" "Get out of my house, you freaks! I'm calling the police!" he bellowed, the sound hollow and pathetic against the silent, looming threat of the Bandidos. Reaper didn't engage in conversation. He walked straight past the shattered door and the petrified mother, his gaze fixed solely on Mark. Snake and Ghost moved with practiced efficiency, securing the room. Snake stepped to the side, blocking the hallway and any potential escape route, while Ghost quickly and gently moved towards Sarah. Ghost, despite his imposing stature and a face covered in scars, had a surprisingly soft touch. He knelt down slowly, making himself small, and spoke to the girl in a low, soothing voice. "Hey, little one, we're just here to make sure you're safe. You don't have to worry about anything anymore, you're safe." Sarah, sensing the genuine care beneath the hardened exterior, didn't hesitate. She clung to Ghost's arm, burying her face in his leather vest. Meanwhile, the main confrontation was underway. Mark tried to swing a fist, a sloppy, desperate move born of panic. Reaper didn't even flinch. He caught the punch mid-air with a crushing grip, a look of utter contempt on his face. "Police won't help you now, friend." Reaper's voice was a low, gravelly rumble, far more terrifying than a shout. "The police deal with consequences. We deal with causes." He tightened his grip and the sound of Mark's knuckles grinding was sickeningly audible. The message was clear. This was not a debate. It was an execution of judgment. Reaper delivered a calculated, precise blow to Mark's solar plexus. Not hard enough to cause serious, lasting damage, but enough to steal his breath, collapse his lungs, and drop him to his knees in immediate, searing pain. Mark gasped, wheezing on the floor, suddenly small and vulnerable. Reaper loomed over him, his silhouette darkening the room. He didn't offer a lecture or a moral sermon. His justice was practical and absolute. He took out his phone and snapped several clear photos of the visible bruises on Sarah's arms and legs, injuries that Ghost was carefully examining. He took pictures of the shattered door and the general state of disarray, evidence that would be hard for the local authorities to ignore, even if they wanted to. He then looked at Sarah's mother, who was now sobbing uncontrollably. "You had a choice," Reaper stated, his voice devoid of emotion. "You chose him over her. Now you choose neither. Get your things. You and the girl are leaving tonight. He stays." The mother was stunned into silence, realizing the full, terrifying weight of the situation. Her inaction had brought something far worse than a family argument to her doorstep. Reaper's plan was simple and direct. The club had resources, a network of safe houses and connections far beyond the reach of Harmony Creek. They weren't just going to leave the girl alone again. Ghost, still holding Sarah protectively, carried her out to the street. He placed her on the back of his massive bike, instructing her to hold tight, his demeanor completely transformed from the feared outlaw to a gentle guardian. Snake, after ensuring Mark was securely restrained and incapable of moving, joined them. Reaper gave the mother a non-negotiable directive. "You pack 2 bags, essentials only. You have 5 minutes. You're coming with us. But understand this, she is our priority now. You get one chance to be her mother again. Don't waste it." Within minutes, the Bandidos were gone, leaving behind only the shattered door, the whimpering Mark tied securely to a kitchen chair, and the indelible mark of their presence. They didn't call the police. They knew the police would eventually be called by a curious neighbor or the mother later, but by then they would be long gone, and Sarah would be safe. The neighbors, peeking through their blinds, saw only the back of the massive motorcycles disappearing down the street, shaking their heads and confirming their prejudices about the bad elements. What they didn't see was the small, brave girl clutching the back of Ghost's cut, already feeling the terrifying weight of fear lift off her shoulders. They rode not towards a bar or a back alley deal, but towards a secure location, an anonymous home far away, where Sarah could finally start to heal. The outlaw rescue was complete, but the true work of protection had just begun. They had intervened, not just physically, but morally, stepping into a gap that the traditional system had tragically left wide open. The road ahead was long, but for Sarah, the thunder of the Harleys now sounded like salvation. The immediate danger was over, but the road out of Harmony Creek was just the beginning. The 3 Harleys didn't stop until they reached a secluded ranch owned by the club, nearly 500 miles away in a state where their presence, though still imposing, was less directly monitored. This ranch served many purposes for the Bandidos, a meeting place, a repair shop, and, on occasions like this, an anonymous sanctuary. Sarah, exhausted and still in shock, was immediately given a safe, quiet room, far from the roar of engines and the tension of adult life. Ghost, the gentle giant, remained her shadow. He procured a massive, worn teddy bear and sat patiently by her side, not pressing her for words, just offering a steady, reassuring presence. For the first time in months, Sarah ate without fear and fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. Reaper and Snake dealt with the mother. She was housed separately, given a stern, unambiguous warning that her role now was solely to support her daughter's recovery or face the club's much harsher, non-negotiable version of consequences. The Bandidos understood that true heroism wasn't just about the dramatic rescue. It was about the dull, difficult work of ensuring a secure future. They had to use their unique status and resources to create a permanent shield. While the mother was given a chance to redeem herself, the club immediately began the process of establishing full legal guardianship for Sarah within their network, circumventing the slow and often neglectful public services. They leveraged their connections, a few well-placed, discreet lawyers and former associates who now worked in various legitimate fields, men who owed the club favors or simply respected their code. This wasn't about power plays. It was about ensuring Sarah's name would be permanently decoupled from her abuser. Meanwhile, back in Harmony Creek, the aftermath unfolded exactly as Reaper had predicted. The neighbors, spurred by the shattered door and the sheer audacity of the Bandidos' entrance, called the police hours later. Mark, still tied up, was a furious, rambling mess. When the local police arrived, they found a man who claimed he was the victim of a violent home invasion. However, the scene told a very different story. The careful photographic evidence Reaper had captured, the distinct bruises on the child's belongings, the sheer terror in the mother's initial interview, quickly shifted the narrative. The police knew the reputation of the Bandidos, and while they launched a low-key search for the girl and the mother, the local authorities were privately relieved that the abusive boyfriend was now in custody, with a clear case of assault and battery against him building, ironically, thanks to the very people they were supposed to arrest. The Bandidos had delivered a piece of undeniable, tangible justice that the police were now forced to follow through on. For the Bandidos MC, the rescue became a quiet, uncelebrated part of their internal folklore. They don't do it for recognition, and certainly not for praise. Their code demands loyalty to their own, but it also enforces a rigid moral boundary against those who prey on the weak, especially children. They operate in a world where good and evil are not defined by badges or leather vests, but by action. In their eyes, Mark was the true outlaw, the one who violated the sanctity of the home and the innocence of a child, a far greater crime than any on the Bandidos' rap sheets. They became the instruments of a justice that society, tangled in red tape and legal complexities, was too slow to provide. Over the next few months, Sarah thrived under the club's protection. She was tutored by a retired teacher who lived on the ranch property. She learned to ride a small pony and found a friend in Ghost's loyal, enormous dog. The fear faded, replaced by the easy confidence of a child who knows she is fiercely protected. The club patched in new members, ran their operations, and dealt with their rivals, all while maintaining a hidden domestic sanctuary where a little girl's laughter echoed through the massive barn. She saw the men not as the monstrous figures of the headlines, but as the quiet, stoic men who saved her, who taught her to be brave, and who showed her that family isn't always about blood, but about an unbreakable commitment to protection. The story of Sarah is never told publicly, never broadcast on the news. It remains a secret shared among the Bandidos, a reminder of the true cost and meaning of their existence. They wear the patches that label them as outlaws, and they accept the judgment of the world, knowing that behind the curtain of black leather and chrome, they are sometimes the only line of defense between the innocent and the monsters. They are not saints, they are not perfect, but on that rainy Tuesday in Harmony Creek, when a small, desperate note landed in the hand of a man named Reaper, the Bandidos MC proved that a hero's heart can beat just as fiercely beneath a jacket that reads outlaw as it does beneath a uniform. They stepped forward, not because they were asked, but because the innocent needed them, and in their world, that is the only law that truly matters.